Takayama's return did not calm the feud. It pushed the conflict toward daylight gunfire, public fear, and the legal quarantine that followed. Just days before his release, a brazen hit outside the Yamaguchi-gumi headquarters in Kobe had violently jolted the standoff. The bloodshed accelerated. In November, former executive Furukawa Keiichi was gunned down in Amagasaki, pushing the unrest to a critical new level. The violence had breached the daylight. The hit took place on a crowded public street. Investigators later identified the weapon as a military-grade automatic rifle. To understand the sheer shock of this hit, one must rewind to 2015, when Kodokai boss Takeuchi Teruaki personally tried to convince Furukawa not to defect. Furukawa defected to Kobe anyway, a betrayal investigators believe sealed a lingering fatal grudge against him. Following Takayama's return, subordinate groups eagerly began hunting Kobe leaders, desperate to prove their loyalty to the new order. In the underworld, explicit orders are rarely given. A subordinate reads the boss's face and executes the violence before a single word is spoken. Investigators concluded that this silent command structure shielded the top leadership from conspiracy charges, allowing violence to flow entirely through implication and deniability. From a legal standpoint, this ambiguity was a perfect weapon. It unleashed the foot soldiers while keeping the absolute top completely insulated. But Takayama favored an even subtler strategy. He weaponized internal division, preferring to rot his enemies from the inside rather than rely solely on brute force. He systematically reached out to the second and third in command of rival factions, promising them quiet backing if they turned against their bosses. By propping up the ambitious lower ranks, Takayama rattled the enemy leadership and tore deep fractures through the rival camp. Investigators analyzed Takayama's method. He engineered outcomes without direct combat, dismantling his enemies through relentless psychological and financial pressure. To veteran police commanders, the violence was never random. These were calculated, surgical strikes against the Kobe faction's weakest pressure points. With Takayama back on the board, police no longer feared a new split. They feared a massive, coordinated escalation of the existing war. Commanders reacted immediately, tightening the surveillance net around key bosses and bracing for the inevitable retaliatory strikes. The Amagasaki hit crossed a fatal red line. Automatic rifles, broad daylight, and crowded streets handed the police the ultimate legal weapon, the specially designated conflict syndicate status. The Amagasaki attack proved to authorities that Takayama's return had immediately reactivated the syndicate's lethal, unspoken command culture. Furukawa Keiichi collapsed on the street, bleeding out at the scene of the attack. Firing an automatic rifle in a bustling shopping district sent shockwaves of terror through the public and the police alike. An emergency police summit was convened, treating the daylight assassination as a critical threat to national public safety. Authorities quickly apprehended the shooter, identifying him as Asahina Hisanori. Kyoto Prefectural Police intercepted Asahina on the highway before he could reach his next target. Investigators discovered that Asahina was en route to Kyoto, heavily armed and hunting for his second victim of the day. His presumed next target was another direct affiliate of the Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi based in Kyoto. Under intense interrogation regarding his motive and route, Asahina casually admitted that Kyoto was indeed his next stop. He eventually confessed that the Yuisei Kai office in Kyoto was his intended destination for the follow-up hit. The assassination bore all the hallmarks of a highly sophisticated, premeditated hunt for key enemy figures. Detectives soon suspected that the Amagasaki shooting was merely the opening salvo of a much larger, multi-target extermination plan. Investigators began linking the Amagasaki hit to a sudden spike in violence across Japan throughout November 2019. Shootings in Kumamoto and Sapporo were recognized as coordinated strikes within this widening nationwide offensive. The Amagasaki incident stripped away the illusion that the war was confined to the underworld. The violence was now bleeding onto civilian streets. After a retaliatory strike hit Takayama's own residence in Mie Prefecture, police warned that the cycle of vengeance was spiraling out of control. The pressure on law enforcement reached a boiling point, with officers scrambling to secure the streets of Amagasaki. Police logs from the split years detailed a relentlessly expanding chain of violence, mapping a war that refused to be contained. The specially designated conflict law was the state's ultimate sledgehammer, designed to paralyze escalating gang wars. Public safety commissions instantly drew strict, red-lined restricted zones across Kobe, Osaka, and Nagoya. The new rules were suffocating. Syndicates could not open new offices, and gathering 5 or more members in a restricted zone meant immediate arrest. Asahina Hisanori, the triggerman in Amagasaki, had inadvertently handed the state the exact justification it needed for this crushing legal crackdown. On January 7, 2020, the official Gazette published the designation, marking a devastating shift in the state's strategy against the warring syndicates. The heavy restrictions blanketed 6 prefectures, including Hyogo, Osaka, and Aichi, creating a massive legal quarantine zone. The designation was designed to freeze their movement, their money, and their meetings, but it could not erase the deep, festering grudges that had already been set in motion. Even with the quarantine in place, the violence leaked through. In May 2020, Ikeda-gumi Wakagashira Mayatani Yuichiro was shot in an Okayama parking lot. For the powerful Ikeda-gumi, it was another devastating loss, having already buried their previous number 2 man in 2016. The 2020 attack on Mayatani proved a grim reality. Legal buffer zones could restrict movement, but they could not stop a determined assassin. Police interpreted boss Inoue Kunio's refusal to retaliate as a desperate effort to prevent a wider, uncontrollable slaughter. But inside the Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi, frustration with Inoue's passivity was reaching a breaking point. Voices openly condemned him for acting like a punching bag while his men died. Ikeda Takashi, the organization's powerful Wakagashira, had already survived 2 assassination attempts. His inability to strike back plunged him into deep, bitter despair over Kobe's leadership. Kobe's weak defensive posture only fueled the anger of its own members, rapidly eroding whatever faith remained in Inoue's command. The cracks became visible at the end of 2019. Veteran boss Ota Morimasa showed up only briefly at the year-end banquet before abruptly leaving, a silent prelude to his departure. In 2020, Ota Morimasa officially withdrew from the Kobe faction and dissolved his group, tearing another massive hole in the Kobe alliance. Crushed by Takayama's relentless psychological warfare and suffocated by the state's conflict designation, the Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi had shifted from fighting a war to desperately fighting for survival.